If you haven't heard of him already, Max Foch is one of YouTube's biggest comedy content creators with nearly 5 million subscribers and is fast becoming one of the world's best stand-up comics too. His self-proclaimed silly style of humor with videos like writing movie spoilers on bald men's heads or training a rat to make ratatouille have built an incredible fan base with nearly 1.6 billion total views. And last year, on the final show of his stand-up comedy world tour, he ended up fulfilling a childhood dream that set him on this journey of becoming a comedian by headlining and selling out one of the largest and most prestigious theatres in London. And I want to tell you how one small email I sent a year earlier ended in me making a short documentary about that performance and his story so far. So rewinding back a little bit to July 2023, I just finished my first documentary, Unconditional, and I could feel this little flicker of momentum off the back of the success it had on the festival circuit. So I was on the lookout for another project to work on next, and I'd been a fan of Max for quite some time, way back when he started posting the street interviews he did at universities, and I'd watched his career grow quite significantly over the years. It was someone who started with something probably as a bit of a joke that then snowballed and was now right in the thick of kind of the comedy content social zeitgeist. That story really interested me, so I managed to track down his email and wrote him a message just to introduce myself, share my work, and say I'd love to chat and maybe do something documentary related if that's something he'd be interested in. And completely to my surprise, he actually replied, which was extremely gracious of him, but he essentially said, not right now, as he felt that there wasn't really anything that warranted doing a documentary style piece. And honestly, at the time, that was a little bit frustrating, as I thought there was plenty of material to do a more retrospective piece on. But Max is an incredible, masterful storyteller, far more experienced than I am, and he could kind of see the pieces slotting together ahead of us far better than I could. Probably about 6 months passed before I sent a little follow-up just to see if maybe it was the right time yet, but another polite decline from him. And at this stage on a number of projects, getting that polite kind of brush off can feel maybe a bit like a defeat, but patience is definitely a strange thing in the filmmaking world. And we talk a lot about kind of momentum and chasing the next job, but so much of this career and our day-to-day is just waiting, whether it's waiting for funding or waiting for sign-off or waiting for other people's schedules to align. And it's sometimes quite easy to confuse that waiting with failure. Sometimes nothing happening isn't the end of something, it's just the space it needs to breathe. Then one morning, probably about 6 months later in September, out of nowhere, I get an email from Max saying that he's coming to the end of his stand-up world tour and was about to play the biggest show of his whole career, and would I like to do a short documentary about it? And it was such a perfect setup to do this sort of project around. He'd seen another stand-up comic perform at that very venue when he was younger, and that's what had actually inspired him to start doing comedy in the first place. So this performance was like this incredible full circle moment for him, and just a brilliant opportunity to not only follow his real-time emotions around such a landmark occasion, but also reflect back on his journey so far with all of that in context. So I'm glad he held off and had the foresight that I didn't have at the time, because the short documentary is absolutely a million times stronger because of this setup. Looking back on it, I think the main thing I learned through this is that you should always just reach out to people, because the worst that someone could say is no. And even then, no really actually means no. Sometimes it just means not right now, or that the pieces aren't in the right place. And sometimes the seeds you plant take a long time to come through. And a lot of them won't, but the few that do are often the ones that can have the potential to change everything for you. And maybe this might sound a bit wanky, but I do think things have a way of happening at the right time if they're meant to. You can't force it, and you definitely can't predict it. But when something clicks into place after months of silence, it does kind of feel proof that all that patience was worth it in the end. And this project is a perfect example of that, because it didn't start the day we turned the cameras on at the Apollo, it started with one very small, quite uncertain email sent over a year before that day. So if there's someone or something you'd love to work on, or a project you've been hesitating to pitch, just do it, because you never know who's reading and what might come of it.